Just an hour and 10 minutes behind schedule, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Listen, we're going to be new parents, which means we're going to be late to everything for a while, okay? So that's just like, 11 is the new 10.
What does that mean?
Like
11 is the new 10.
Yeah, like 10 a.m. is normally when we're here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Why? What did you think?
I don't know. I was thinking of it like, oh, no.
Oh, no.
We did this again.
Oh, no.
Hold on.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Here we go. Okay, I think we're good now. Again, it's just us this week. No Scotty. We might change it up where we do it like this from now on, where it's just, I like having Scott as our engineer, but I also like sitting at the captain's chair at my desk.
You're at the helm.
Sure.
The helm of common ground.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What do you...
Should we introduce ourselves?
They know who we are.
Maybe they don't. This could be a first-time listener.
Okay.
They could have stumbled upon this.
Take it away.
I'm Rachel LaForce.
I'm Alex Gettlin.
Guys, we're married. We're comedians. We do this podcast every Monday. It's called Common Ground because, guys, the world is on fire. So that's what we do. We talk about current events. We used to be funny. I was thinking about that. I'm gonna let you go to the thing you want to talk about, and then I want to talk about when comedy went to die.
Well, I was just gonna say, what do you think is the next thing everybody's gonna be an expert in? Because it was pandemics and like diseases,
sure,
and then election security,
sure,
and now it's Middle East conflict.
I mean, I am shocked at how everybody's just got the answer.
Yeah,
and it was so funny because there was an influencer that I follow, and her whole page is about like mental health and and stuff like that. And it's normally like, these are my new lashes, really, really groundbreaking stuff. And I guess she didn't post about the Palestinian conflict fast enough, and people were attacking her.
Who's this influencer?
Her name is China Alexander.
Yeah,
and she.
The funny thing is,
she posted and she was like, let me be very clear. First of all, she was like, I have never been silent about anything ever. Also, if you're looking to influencers to get your information, that's your problem. I am not she's like, I am not a lifelong researcher. I am learning about all of these things just at the same rate that you are. I thought it was just a really smart rebuttal.
Yeah. Finish. I didn't say anything.
You just seemed like you were ready to say something.
I will, but I'm going to wait till you're done.
Anyway, I'm just saying, I think it's crazy that we're all expecting everybody to be experts about everything. It's like, why I understand the difference if it's somebody who, I understand the idea of white silence, right? It's perpetuating these, I understand that. But not having an immediate response to traumatic world events, I want to look around and be like, aren't y'all tired? I'm just tired of having to even have an opinion.
Yeah.
And an informed opinion. I'm tired.
Well, I think this one in particular, first of all, people are not looking to these influencers as experts. They're looking to them to try and pressure them into supporting whatever side or cause they've decided they're on. I'm going to assume the influencers pressuring this person were on the Palestinian side, not the Israeli side.
I don't know. I didn't do any more digging besides that.
Yeah, I'm just guessing. What I'm saying, though, is this issue, and obviously as a Jewish person, this one hits a little home differently. But this current situation, not actually what's happening on the ground, just the internet response to it, to me, is proof positive of the folly of what the math of conflict and debate has become with everything today. It's a very simple premise. You look at whatever it is, the two sides, for lack of a better term, and then you just look at who is quote unquote more powerful, however that means, bigger military, more wealth, whatever. And that person by default is the evil side, and then the less powerful side is by default the morally good side. It's very simple. And that is not the reality for 99.9% of things in the world. They're infinitely complicated and nuanced. People don't want that, though. So with this one in particular, it's a very simplistic, easy way to look at it and say, Israel is the wealthier, more militaristically powerful country.
Wait, is Israel a country?
You didn't know that?
No, I knew that, but I feel like I saw something recently that was like, Israel is not a country.
Yeah, that's propaganda. Well, okay, so officially,
I have not done my research because I know you have been like really, this has very much affected you.
yeah.
And
Well, because this is I'm going to preface by saying
I also love that the first thing I said was, remember when we used to be funny? And then you were like, let's talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, so I'll preface by saying I know I'm about to say this, and people.
I just feel like we should play at the end of every episode an in memoriam video where Sarah McLachlan sings, and it's just us doing stand up from like before 2020.
Yeah. So
I just want people to remember.
I know. I'm gonna try and give you the very, very super quick version of what has happened in this part of the world, like a really quick.
I mean, I understand more or less what's happening. I understand the outrage, and there are some people that, like you and I both mutually know, that are Palestinian, that are like it's just been interesting to see like folks I know that are Palestinian or folks I know that are American Jews having feelings about this, posting about it makes sense to me. Other people wanting to bring awareness to a worldly issue that's not in America, I think is smart. I think it's the right thing to do. I just think it's way too easy now for people to recycle other people's words, and then it's just enhancing like virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm. I just have to address the one comment you mentioned, though, that you were asked. I know you were legitimately asking, is Israel a real country? The reason you're confused is because, so I was trying to say the very super duper quick version is in 1947, the United Nations, the United Nations split what is modern day Israel and the Palestinian territories into two different countries. One that was governed by the Israeli government, the other one governed by the Palestinians. And all of the Palestinians and all of the surrounding Arab nations flat out rejected it and said, no, we will not accept this. And they declared war against the state of Israel that same day. Israel won that war and has since then become an independent state. However, all of those countries refuse to recognize it, and they say it's illegitimate, it's stolen, yada, yada. And that is why, and there's a lot more to this, I'm just giving the like sentence version. And that's why there's all this propaganda being pushed saying Israel is a stolen apartheid state. Now, there's some people who listen to this show who might feel that way. I'm just going to disagree with you. I don't have the time to get into it here. But it's just, we're already seeing an uptick in the language shifting from the Israelis to the Jews, all Jews, and I know it's very easy for people to roll their eyes like, oh, Jews have money. You guys have all the power. Stop being a paranoid buffoon. But if you look at
I think that, I mean, the Holocaust is I would say, probably our biggest, most well-known genocide, right? I don't feel like to say
depends who you ask. I would say so, but many people. Anyway, I don't. If
many people would what?
Well, I could dive into it, but I can tell when I start to, you sort of glaze over.
Well, I can tell that you have a lot of feelings about it. And that's okay. I'm not
sorry that I am emotionally attached to the only country on the planet that represents my cultural heritage.
I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is I can tell there's still a lot of anger that hasn't been worked through. And so I'm like, I don't know if talking about it like will help you to talk about it and get it out, or you feel like you want to inform people of different points of view. I'm happy to leave space for that. I'm simply saying, and you and I obviously I kind of just woke up today. So personally where I'm at, I'm just feeling this like very inherent need to be funny. I don't know what has spawned that, but I think it might be in just response to like I realized how fatigued and tired I am of everything that we all collectively have drummed up and created over the last, I mean, arguably over the last 5 years. I think this was like really starting to kick up, before the 2016 election. So anyway, I'm just in a place now where I'm like, I got to get back to just
Sure.
like being funny. So that's just the place that I came into the conversation today. So I was not prepared. But I'm happy to leave space if you want to talk about it.
I think we can move on, and it's enough.
Well, you can finish what you're saying. I just don't want to spend the whole hour talking about it.
The issue that upsets me with this is to summarize it in a very simplistic, but like looking at through the lens of like what the internet sees is that it's so in that part of the world, and then we can move on from it, but it's an impossible conflict. It will never be resolved in a healthy way. And a large part of it is because Hamas.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like when it started, it was already started at a 10.
Right. And it's only gotten progressively worse. And every time, like Hamas, which is the de facto government that runs the Gaza Strip, which is, I don't know if you know this, but the Palestinian territories are split into two different parts, right? So the Hamas governs the Gaza Strip. Is
Hamas also the name of the hand symbol?
That's a Hamza.
Okay.
Yeah, but it sounds similar.
Okay, keep going.
This is also, I apologize to people listening if this is like a boring episode to you and you're just, fast forward maybe 10 minutes and we'll be into like funnier stuff.
I mean, probably 20 minutes.
But since we started, I have to talk about this. This is very important to me.
Okay.
So Hamas, so the Gaza Strip is one of the areas that the Palestinians govern. In 2004, I think, might have been 2006. I think it was 2006. The Israeli government withdrew all of every citizen, like every Jewish Israeli that was in the Gaza Strip. Israel pulled them all out, took out all military presence, and basically made Gaza an autonomous piece of land for the Palestinians only. They immediately elected Hamas, and in their charter, their mission, their like goal is to eradicate the state of Israel and push the Jews completely out of the country. So it's like in there. Now, feel how you want about it. You could argue that's because the Jews stole it. I don't agree with that. There's a lot of history behind this. But whatever. The fact is, Hamas's sole mission is to completely destroy the country of Israel. And so Hamas has been firing. Now it's hit like 800 rockets into Israel. Now, Israel has something called the Iron Dome. It's this incredible piece of technology they invented that can shoot down rockets from the sky. So Hamas fires all these rockets. Israel shoots them out of the sky with a pretty good efficacy rate because their technology is incredible. And so what's happening is Hamas, they don't have, because they're inferior militarily, they're inferior financially, but the one thing they have is they can use the world stage to try and highlight how awful the life is for the people in Gaza. And I don't disagree with that part. People in Gaza live in hell. Whose fault is it is debatable, in my opinion. But
why? So where does it come in? Evidence or propaganda that it's Israel's fault that the Palestinian people are, living these, like where does that part come in?
So this is the issue. So like I said, since 1947, basically they've been in a perpetual state of war. Israel's had like officially I think like 5 or 6 wars so Israel's about the size of New Jersey. Every single country that surrounds it is a sworn enemy of Israel. They have a very cold peace with Egypt and Jordan, but they've been at war basically.
Cold peace?
It's like do you know what that means or no?
No, I just was going to say it sounds like a good name for a podcast.
Okay. I got it. So in 1967, there was another war where Israel was attacked by its neighbors, and they captured a bunch of land in that war because it was areas that are now, quote unquote, disputed. Because, again, these other neighboring countries with the Palestinian authorities attacked Israel again. And so Israel took these pieces of land back, being like, you guys tried, like, you staged attacks against us. We're going to defend ourselves from these parts of the land. But the part that's really awful now is that there's quite a bit, what I was trying to get at before, there's a huge uptick in civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip. And so if you look at it solely from that angle, you say this is barbaric. Israel is killing innocent civilians. The issue is because Hamas is so militarily inferior, they bed themselves within, like they put their rockets and their military strongholds in hospitals and schools, in the most vulnerable places, because they know that the world will see that. Their only angle is to make Israel look so barbaric that the world turns on them, because they're never going to win financially or militarily in like a normal battle. Now, I'm not arguing necessarily that like that isn't their last resort and they were pushed. Like it's an impossible situation, but effectively this little piece of land has been fought over relentlessly.
What's the piece of land they're fighting over? The Gaza Strip?
No, the entire country, which is either Israel or Palestine, depending on how you define it.
And who was the leader that in 1947 split it in two?
The United Nations. So it used to.
And why did they do that? Because they were fighting so badly that it was like kids, where you were like, fine, then I'm just going to put the toy in half, and you get half, and you get half.
Kind of. So the British had control of what is today Israel-Palestine. From 1947 back to, I forget when, but it was the Ottoman Empire before them, and then it was like, it goes all the way back to the Romans, and then it was like the Jews, if you follow it all the way back to like 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I know like Bible time.
Right. So in that time, so what happened was in 70 AD, the Romans expelled all of the Jews from Israel. They were like, you can never be here again. They kicked them all out, and that's when it was called the diaspora, and they were spread all over the world. Okay. Then it was the Romans, the Ottoman Empire, the British. So at the end of World War II, from like the mid 1800s to the Holocaust, there was a big influx of Jews fleeing Europe and coming back to what is today Israel/Palestine. And a large part was because they were like, no matter where we go, everybody tries to commit a genocide against us. Why don't we return to our one homeland that we were expelled from 2,000 years ago? And then it got like, there was a big uptick in like parts of the country were Jewish predominantly. Other parts of the country were Muslim Palestinians. The British had control. The British are like, we don't want to deal with this anymore. The UN comes in and carves it up and says, this part's for the Arabs, this part's for the Jews. All of the Arab nations said, we don't accept this. Most of Europe, the United States, a few other countries did accept it. So then in 1947, when Israel declared independence, they were unanimously declared.
Slow down. So I know that, so all of the Arab countries were like, we do not accept this.
And declared war against Israel at once.
So, but why was that? Like, where is the, I'm trying to get like, where, and I understand that it's like super, super detailed, but where did this huge hate between the Israelis and the Palestinians, where is the origin of that? Where does that come from? Because now it's been so long that it's like, it just depends on, it's like hearing from you and from our other friend like Guido Barak, who was in the Israeli army and lived there for many, many years. Like you're hearing very different sides, right? And I'm not labeling,
Sure.
I'm not judging them. I'm just talking about it simply as like information, right? And it's also difficult because even like living in America, right? Depending on which way you take American propaganda, you can have a totally different point of view, right? So I'm still not educated enough to, nor do I feel like it's something I really have to have a strong opinion on.
You don't have to.
But so that's my question. Where did the kind of origin of that hate come from? Because why wouldn't everybody, like my other question is, okay, if it's known that like Arab countries were like, we do not accept this as early as 1947.
Yeah.
How is it now that Israel is on the hook of like, so the narrative is simply that Israel is like imprisoning these people or like holding them. What is the?
So this is the reality, is that the Israeli.
It's honestly been so overwhelming. I haven't even, admittedly, have not.
It's okay.
Read anything because the internet is just a hellscape right now.
So this is the perfect example of when you can look at half of information and be like, oh my God, that's awful. And then you look at the rest of it and you're like, well, now it's way more complicated, but we don't like to do that. So for example, right, Israel does, and not just Israel, but the surrounding Egyptian border of Gaza too, they completely control. Even though Gaza is autonomous technically, the Israeli government and to an extent the Egyptian government, because they have a border with Gaza, control checkpoints in and out of the border, the power grid, the sea, the Navy, like everything. They're completely controlled. And so you would say, well, that means that they're under basically imprisonment. To an extent, yes, that's true. The reason is because it's been a relentless state of suicide bombs and rocket attacks nonstop. The easiest way to think of it is like, imagine if California and Arizona, right? Just pretend that like California had complete control over, or even better, the city of Beverly Hills, right? It's inside and completely surrounded by LA. So if Beverly Hills is like, we don't accept LA, and LA was like, fine, you can be autonomous. And then Beverly Hills is like, but all of this is stolen, so we wage war against you. And then it's like rocket attacks, suicide bombs, all of this stuff. And then Israel's like, which is in this scenario, LA, being like,
I'm following.
Well, we're not going to allow that. We're going to defend ourselves. So we're going to put you guys on a complete lockdown and fight back aggressively if you attack us. And this is what's happening now. It's an impossible. So this has been happening.
So the Palestinians basically didn't want they didn't want Israel to have any sort of ability to tell them what to do one way or the other. They basically wanted to be completely separate, is what I'm hearing. Let me finish. They didn't want anything to do with them. Now, and also did not accept when it was split in half. So They were already pissed from the beginning.
Correct.
But Israel has way more money. Is that true?
They're a way more powerful country. Their economy is stronger. Their technology is better. They're just, you could argue.
So far superior in the ways of power as we know it from a government stance. Okay. So because of that, then you have the Palestinian government is even more of at an outrage and wanting to do things basically to cause entrapment. They're trying to trap Israel into looking certain ways, one way or the other.
Effectively, yes. So
if we're looking at it, I'm not looking at kids crying in the street, buildings being blown up, all that. I'm simply looking at it from two totally different countries that have had a feud for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That both obviously want to protect their people and or the people in positions of power. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what language you speak, what color your skin is.
Yeah.
People in positions of power don't want to give up their power. It doesn't matter where they are. From looking at it from that standpoint, it is very clear to me of like, well, I don't know what the answer is.
There is no answer. The answer, this is the answer. Well, so, and I'll also preface, Israel has plenty of flaws. Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister. He's corrupt as shit too. Like there's a lot of issues with him. I do not know the name. I know Mahmoud Abbas represents the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank. I do not remember the name of who controls Hamas. But either way, all these guys are power-hungry lunatics, I'm sure. What I'm saying is that effectively what it is that this land, like Hamas and the Palestinians will not stop until Israel does not exist.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The saddest part is that there are these kids that are suffering. There are all these families that are poor, that have no other option, that cannot escape, both from Israel or from Palestine, that are ploys to this entire thing. And that's the part.
It's infuriating.
That's the part that is right. But it's like we see the same things like that in America, where it's like, you've got, and I'm not comparing the two, obviously our lives here in America are significantly, the majority of them, because there are people that are still very, very much suffering. But for the majority, our lives are much better. So I don't mean to compare, the lives of most Americans to those that are living in the Gaza Strip in buildings that have been, exploded and things like that. But it's the same way, like our government pawns off, different groups of people here, and then they don't fucking do anything different.
Sure.
I mean,
it's just way more intense there, but yes.
Right. But I'm just saying that I think that that's also the part that needs to be highlighted sometimes, because it's easy to go after like groups of people.
Right.
I feel like that's the thing that we're doing a lot right now, is like just this pointing fingers.
And that was kind of my original point I was trying to get at, is that the way that the internet narrative has become today is it's a very simplistic and easy way to look at it. And listen, again, there's people who watch this maybe and who disagree with me politically. Fine, I'm happy to debate with you if you want, or we can just agree to disagree. That whoever's the more powerful one is the oppressor. And so no matter how you break it down, even no matter how many examples you can give, this is this narrative going on too, being like, if you say, but Hamas this, but Hamas that, because Hamas is recognized as a terrorist organization by the entire European Union, England, the United States,
and that's
Canada.
The government in Palestine or in Israel?
In Gaza. So Palestinians live in two areas, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Hamas controls the Gaza Strip. Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader of the Palestinian Authority, control the West Bank. And they have fighting with each other too. They're like two different groups of Palestinian organizations that don't like each other, but they equally hate Israel. And it's also an easy way. So and we can move on from this because I know it's getting overwhelming and it's not interesting.
I don't think that that's fair to say, but it just shows you, but I talk about this all the time when it comes to race relations in America, which is like to just decide, like everything's got to be about race is like such a gross blanket statement. And then also to say everything is inherently racist is all like choosing either side of the coin is not looking at the many, many layers of how long like different things have been instituted in order to like oppress Black and brown people. And then like as white people, like we've never been privy to that, structure because we benefit from it. So how would we know? And like, it's the chicken or the egg. And so hearing you share these things, it feels, I'm just looking at it from like a kind of like a spiritual point of view of like what we do as humans in the name of like survival, in the name of, power. And then now we live in this time where we can create any narrative we want, and then we can boil it down to bullet points, and we can be like, share this with your friends. And then, suddenly, every girl named Lauren, in Ohio is like, this is what's really going on. And it's like, Lauren, you don't know.
I mean, it's just, it's kind of similar in a way to what happened to that poor girl in Ohio where the cop showed up. She had a knife in her hand, was charging at someone. The cop shot her and killed her. And then you could argue, well, she was about to kill someone. The cop is the hero. You could argue, no, he's a cop and he shot a Black teenage girl. He's a monster.
Wasn't she the one that called the cops saying that she...
But even so, there's security, and I don't want to get into the nuances of that, but there's security cam footage. You can hear her say to the other girl, I'm going to fucking stab you. And she's charging with a knife. The cop had no option, in my opinion. People disagree. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I think it seemed like it was pretty cut and dry. But the same thing, though, is like you can look at it either way and paint either of them as the victim or the hero. And the problem is, the real question is, why was that girl's life in such shambles that she felt she was prepared to stab someone in front of a police officer?
Right, but we don't care about those reasons.
But that's the same thing going on here.
I know. But that's why I'm saying that, it sucks because, again, like we're asked, like we all have to have an immediate response. And if you don't have the popular response, then, it's like the woodsman from Beauty and the Beast are going to show up at your house.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame because it's like, yeah, I agree of like, well, we're not talking about the nuances of all of these things. Like, well, why are we in this situation to begin with? And then it's just a shame because it's like our governments aren't going to do anything differently. It's like, that's why, like, yeah, I was like super fucking relieved to not have to listen to Trump for another 4 years because I was literally, my eyes were going to start bleeding. But then at the same time, when everybody was like, oh, Kamala and Biden and la, and I'm like, nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to change. It's just going to be way more fucking boring. So, it's like, which is probably good. I can use a little bit of boredom. But anyway, I'm sorry that it has been such a difficult and stressful thing for you as a Jewish person. And again, I've just, for me, I'm like...
But the reason I don't even bother trying to engage with folks is I've tried in the past, and the answer always comes back to like people who have a strong opinion about this. They're like, they always say it in a way that's like, and it goes, again, everything is now in the lens of power dynamics and group association through power dynamics. So they always say things like, you Jews already have everything. You guys control the banks, you control the media, you control Hollywood. It's like, we are not all on a team. But the thing is, it's like, people laugh in your face sometimes. They'll roll their eyes at you when you say this shit, especially out here in LA. But, you know, like, Jews are very fair game to attack in that way, because a lot of people who are Jewish happen to be wealthy, and they've worked, you know, in my opinion, they didn't steal it. They worked. I mean, there's some people like Bernie Madoff, but they worked hard and built wealth for themselves. But whenever you have a small group of people that are very to do, like they have wealth and they have power, people are suspicious and angry at them. And then you compound it with what's going on in Israel, and it's a very, very easy and enticing narrative to buy into. These, you know, manipulative, evil. It's what the Romans did when they killed Christ and then converted to Christianity and sold the narrative of like, oh, well, it was the dirty Jews that convinced us to kill Jesus, and it's never gone away. And people laugh at you when you get upset about it, or at me, they just laugh like, get out of here. You guys already have everything. Get over yourself. But, you know, I'm not going to back down from that. I'm not going to just like not be rightfully concerned about like an uptick in, you know, aggressive narratives against Jewish people. But, you know, we can move on from it. This is not entertaining or funny.
Well, it's entertaining. It's certainly not funny. But
the lights are on a timer. I don't know why I started doing. It's okay. We'll just leave it like that.
That was very scary. The only thing that I share to you when I hear you say that, and I'm not saying at all that you don't like agree that, you know, racism is real or anything like that. But when I hear you share things like that about when people tell you about your group of people, right? And how infuriating that is, because it's like, you have no idea. Why are you telling me about my life experience? I just say the same thing of like, you know, when there are large groups of people that are like, listen, we're not all monolith, but this has been my experience, and like that everybody can have a different experience. It's just a reminder of like, you know,
I don't disagree with that. I don't think I have.
I know. I'm just saying that, like, because like sometimes, you know, sometimes you and I don't always see eye to eye, and we don't have to. That's why we have this podcast. That's why we named it Common Ground. But just as a reminder of like, yeah, think about how infuriating that is when people try to tell you about your experience. It's like, you know, now compound that by being a part of a group of people that don't have power.
Right.
You know. But so, okay, so then to put a pin in it.
Yeah.
Because it's been 40 minutes.
32, but yeah.
What, but on the internet though, so basically, what is everybody calling for? The eradication of Israel? Or like what? So with like what?
It depends who you ask, but more or less, you know, trying to basically paint Israel as a country that commits genocide, that it's an apartheid state, that they are the sole aggressor and oppressor of the Palestinian people.
So that if Israel was taken out, then the Palestinians would then, there wouldn't be violence, or that they would have money? Because I feel like to say that they would have resources is not at all true.
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, the other thing too is that the thing that's infuriating also is like, if you identify as like a progressive, liberal, left person, Hamas is one of the most oppressive regimes against gays and women and all these other minority groups that have no rights under their authority. And then they would just argue, well, Hamas came to power because Israel made it so bad for the Palestinians. It's an impossible thing. I think in a dream scenario, people, I won't name anyone's name, but there are people we know who are Palestinian, who I've seen share things, and basically their attitude is like, the Jews were never supposed to be there in the first place. It was illegitimate from the get-go. They need to leave. They were like in.
So where were they living before Israel? That's where I'm confused, because I thought
the other thing too people forget is they all got, when Israel was declared a state, all the Jews were expelled from the surrounding Arab countries. A lot of them lived in places like Jordan. Like, there are some Jews still in Iran, but most of them are booted out. But they were basically living throughout Europe, parts of the Arab world, and when this big shift happened, especially the Jews, that they're called Mizrahi Jews, I think is the type of term they use. Like Sephardi Jews are from Spain, Ashkenazi Jews are from Europe. They were all pushed out by the Arabs. Like, get the fuck out of here. Because
why did the Arabs hate them so much?
Because they're outsiders they don't like. And then there was this uptick of this Jewish presence appearing in the middle of everything, Muslim and Arab around them. Why does anybody hate anybody group? Because they're an outsider and they don't like them and they're afraid of what's different and,
No, I know, but I know that like the reason why there's white supremacy is because when this country was founded, when this country was founded, there were people here that were doing just fine before, white dudes from Europe showed up. We didn't need you, Todd, but, like it was.
I mean, those groups oppressed each other as well.
Right. But I'm saying that, people because it's like, that was their land. It was everything they know. If there's another group of people that come in, what are you going to do? You're not going to go, oh, you know what? I bet you guys are really nice. No, people come in like wanting to destroy and rape and pillage the women and children in your area and steal of your oxen or whatever. Like, obviously you're going to, put up dukes. But I think that's different than rightfully enslaving people or kicking people out of their land because you have more resources than them.
Sure.
I mean, there still is like, yes, most things are convoluted or very difficult, but we can still point to things both, especially even the Palestinian-Israeli conflict of like things that are rightfully unjust.
So this is the real agenda what's happening right now. So America has been an ally, a very strong ally with Israel since its inception. Now, a big reason is probably because it's a Western-style democracy in the middle of the Middle East that has the generally same sort of cultural and political values as a country like the United States. Some people would also argue, well, that means they want to be colonial imperialist like the U.S. military. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying why they're allies. So that's why they've been strong allies with each other. The narrative now, with the uptick of like their super progressive wing of the Democrats, like Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ilhan Omar, who's the other one? I forget her name. It doesn't matter. But that group, their big push is to sever political ties with Israel and make it so they're not an ally. Because Israel and the United States do a ton of business with each other, a lot of trading of military stuff and things like that. So now the big push is to basically get the U.S. and all these other countries to sever ties with Israel and basically leave them out to dry. And then I would think in long term, hopefully eventually be able to eradicate that country in a war through like what they couldn't do the first, 5 or 6 times all these countries tried to do. Because there's other organizations in places like Syria and Lebanon who hate Israel too.
But then, so then they get rid of Israel. So then what are they going to do? They're just going to kill all the Jews all over again? Like, I don't mean to say that so bluntly, but that's what I'm asking of like, okay, so let's say that it is the Jews' fault. Let's say that it's Jewish people's fault. It's Israelis' fault. Like, they're the ones that are oppressing. Everything that is being done is correct.
Yeah.
Palestinians are correct. Let's go with that narrative. Then what is the fix? Then they're going to take out all of these people? Because clearly if all of these Arab countries were like expelling Jewish folks from their countries anyway, like what do you, I don't know what the answer is.
Can I tell you something? So there was a big rally, I think on Saturday. There was like the Free Palestine rally. And there were videos going around.
Aren't they free? That's the part that I'm confused. Why are they not free?
It depends who you ask. See, it's interpreted different ways depending on who you're asking.
What is the popular narrative right now? The popular narrative is that Israelis won't let them leave. Where are they going to go?
The popular narrative is that all of the country of Israel is illegitimately stolen from the Palestinians by the Jews. And that and this part is true, that, like I said, they have all these strict like police state type restrictions on them because since its inception and really it upticked in the 90s. I don't know if you remember hearing about like Clinton trying to broker peace.
Yeah.
So there's this guy named Yasser Arafat who used to control the Palestinians. And it was basically proven then he was like doing these peace negotiation talks. And at the same time, his like militaristic wing of his, I don't know what the organization was called. It wasn't Hamas. It was something else. I think it was the PLO maybe. They were like actively carrying out suicide bombings and all kinds of things. It's not, see, the problem, we're looking at it through the lens of the United States and a Western view. It doesn't work that way over there. And I'm generalizing hard. I understand that. But like, you can't apply Western American democratic thinking to this part of the world. I would assume, I don't know, my assumption is if they were to pull this off and somehow wipe out all the Jews and Israel's for the taking, then it would turn into Hamas versus the Palestinian Authority, which is the other half of the Palestinian, and they would just start fighting with each other of who then gets to control it.
But I guess my question is, it's like, wait a minute. So we said that the Holocaust, and I'm speaking very, very generally, so please, anyone that's listening, like, you're welcome to have your opinions or emotions based off of what I'm saying, but I'm literally asking questions in order to better understand.
Sure.
Which is, so obviously, like, the Holocaust was terrible. We wiped out, like, it was, Hitler's whole thing of, like, we're basically going to wipe these people out, right?
Correct.
So, who were completely innocent, but I'm not going to get into the Holocaust. The point being, then, I guess I'm just confused because it's like, okay, if they're saying that it was, like, stolen land.
Right. Which is not accurate, but fine. I mean, agree to disagree.
But, yeah, but then it is that thing of, like, well, it depends on who you ask, and then, it's like, yeah, and then it's also like a narrative that's been told over time. But again, so it's like, okay, so I mean, it does feel like an impossible situation because I understand if the Palestinians really were attacking with these rockets, et cetera, and suicide bombers, et cetera, as much as what I'm hearing from you. Let's just say that's a fact, right? Then it makes sense that they would be like, great, then we're not going to like let anybody into our country. Like, why would we do that? That's insane. It's the same reason why Trump was like, we're going to build a wall. It's the same fucking thing. But, which that whole thing, oh God bless. I just got like a trauma response in my body to talking about it. But then, so let's say that like the compromise was if United Nations, whoever gets to decide, I don't know how that works, that they would be like, okay, well, obviously we can't like eradicate Israel. So here's what we're going to do. You guys, in order to like it not be so oppressive, you can't control the borders. They're now neutral borders. Let's say that's like what happened. Well, then if the Palestinians were then able to like wage war, then it's like, okay, well, then who's in the right?
But they've tried this. This has happened in the 90s when they were trying to cut deals like this. And there is no compromise. That's what I'm saying. There's no situation where these groups who control the Palestinian authorities are going to take a compromise. And so
but one more question.
Yeah.
But then it's the popular narrative, what you were talking about, of like a powerful nation versus like a poor nation.
Yeah.
So is the narrative that if Israel didn't have control over these borders, then Palestinian children wouldn't be like bombed and or poor? Like, that's the part I can't figure out. Like, let's say that
that is a narrative that many people push.
But that doesn't make any sense to me because that doesn't have anything to do with, like, that has everything to do with the infrastructure of Palestine. That doesn't have anything. If they're two different countries.
So then they would argue that it's the same way of like redlining or something, where basically the Palestinians who live in Gaza and the West Bank, but especially Gaza, they quote unquote are autonomous, but Israel has boxed them in a way that they can't really. The thing is, the way I see it, and
wait. So, okay, so now I'm following you. So you're saying that the narrative is if Israel didn't have these border restrictions,
correct,
then Palestinians would be able to like go to Israel, and then they would have more ability to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, for lack of a better term.
I mean, effectively, it's.
But why would Palestinians, if they hate Jewish people, if they hate Israelis, why would they flee? Or if Palestine was so great, why would they flee Palestine to go into Israel anyway?
You're looking at it from an angle that doesn't exist. The narrative isn't that at all. The narrative is that the Jews shouldn't be there in the first place, and we have to get them out. And Hamas. So this is the other thing that people don't understand, and I'm only repeating things from sources that I think are getting it pretty much correct. Why this is an uptick now? So these rockets that have been brought into Gaza, they're getting smuggled in by Iran. Iran is doing this on purpose to specifically stoke like this flame because from what I understand, the two major players in the Middle East for like control of the area are Iran and Saudi Arabia, and they're very, very much at like non-serious war with each other. Now, Saudi Arabia is not a friend of Israel really, but when it comes to like with versus Iran, Saudi does side itself more so with the U.S. and Israel. And so basically
Because it's that money, y'all.
but it's just like things like that too. It's like it's the same way like why America was fighting against Russia in other countries. Does that make sense? It's sort of like that. So like there's been an uptick in that. Some people say like why there's an uptick of this right now. Also, there's some belief that apparently so the guy Mahmoud Abbas who controls the West Bank, he was supposed to have an election. All these governments are like de facto fake governments, right? And then it turned out that like he had to cancel elections for some reason. And I guess the thought people are saying is because he was going to get voted, his group was going to get voted out, and Hamas was going to take over the West Bank. And then, you know, of course, if something's a crisis, you have to make a new thing happen to.
Well, also, so what happened in all of this that it suddenly, what was the inciting incident that everybody's talking about it now?
Okay, so this most recent one, there are two things, okay? So in the West Bank, there's these disputed territories that are settlements that I guess there's something with, there's like 4 houses that are up for debate in Israeli courts that Palestinian families claim belong to them, but then some Jewish families argue, no, it's ours, and they were like, people were squatting in these houses, and I guess the Palestinians are saying Jews are stealing even more of our land, and like that was like the first thing, and then you take media narratives combined with contested elections to ramp that fuel up. At the same time, so in Jerusalem is the holiest city on earth. We all know this, right? So there's a Jewish quarter, an Arab quarter, and a Christian quarter. So right at the exact
Who has the fourth quarter?
there's like an Armenian Christian. There's like I forget who else, but there's
That was just where I was like,
Right.
it's only 75%.
But there's it's
the
like
other 25. They're like, it's for the taking. You know what I mean?
So the absolute holiest site on earth for Jews is the Western Wall. And the Western Wall is the last remaining wall of the sacred holy temple that was destroyed by the Romans. Now, literally right next to the Western Wall is the Temple Mount, which is the third holiest site for the Muslims. Coincidence, right? That the Jews and Muslims have 2 of their most sacred sites on earth literally right next to each other, okay?
Sorry, I'm listening. Your son is kicking the crap
all right.
out of me, and I can't get comfortable. I'm sorry. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so
Okay, so the Muslims and the Jews, their most sacred holy places right next to each other. Everybody wants to be in Jerusalem.
right, okay.
Was the Tower of Babel in Jerusalem?
I don't know. I don't think so. But
Or is Babel a place? Okay.
let me just finish this.
I'm just thinking where it's like we're all fighting over the same place. Well, and obviously as a complete outsider, it's like it seems super fucking obvious to me that it's like, oh, clearly like this one area is where like so much origin of the Middle East took place.
It's also
that,
where
like,
Christianity's birthed from too.
I know, but that's what I'm saying, where it's like how could we possibly believe of like who that land belongs to?
Which is why it's perpetual warfare, because the attitude is like, get the fuck out. We will not stop until it's ours. I mean, what else do you do? So there's no, but let me just finish this one last thing. So there was then what happened recently in the midst of all this argument in the courts about these houses is that, so the Temple Mount is like high up, and then the Western Wall where the Jews are is like below, right? There's never been any military action there because it's a sacred site, but then I guess apparently the Palestinians claim that the Israeli military came in and were like rounding up people at the Temple Mount and doing like police roughhousing and stuff. The Israeli government said because they were staging an attack that was going to attack people at the Western Wall, and who you believe is up for debate. But that's like, those are the 2 things that really kickstarted this. And then
And when was that happening?
like a week ago.
Okay.
And then Hamas started firing all these rockets into Israel. But then there's like this video going around where like the Israeli military blew up a building that had like the offices of the Associated Press and a few other journalist outfits. And they're like, see, they don't want the truth out. They blew up the media building. But then it's because Hamas is embedded. It would be like if whatever organization is a military operation is in the same building as the press. And on top,
Wait, slow down. I don't understand what you're saying.
so imagine like a high-rise building, right?
Right.
And the Associated Press and other major media outlets are in this building.
Okay, so CNN,
Right.
ABC. Okay,
Sure.
great. Okay,
The equivalent to that.
sure. Okay.
Turns out Hamas, who is actively waging war against Israel, firing rockets in Israel, is in this same building. So the Israeli government calls the press offices and says,
okay, so they're hiding in places that it would be bad PR for them to get blown up.
correct.
Okay, so it's a great military strategy.
And not only that, the Israeli government calls all the press offices and says, hey, you guys have 1 hour. We're going to blow this building up. Get everybody out. I mean, now you could, it depends whose side you're on, but to me, that's like, okay, they're trying to do the most moral thing possible, giving warning to the civilians, hey, man, you're in a building that we have to take out because it's a threat to our country. We're giving you a heads up. But then the narrative on the internet is like, see, the Jews are trying to hide the media story, blah, blah, blah. The thing that I am of resolve with is that unfortunately the world, for the most part, is just always going to look at the Jews in Israel as the villains, the aggressors, and the only thing they can do is to sort of double down on holding as strong as they can, trying to protect themselves. And it's just an unfortunate reality that this is the narrative that's been the case since, at least 2,000 years ago, and it's not really going to go away. And we can try and win hearts and minds, but it's a losing battle.
Well, as somebody again who was on the outside, you're not going to win. You're not going to win fans either as an Israeli or as a Palestinian. I mean, to me, where it's just like it's at this point about survival, but even more about survival, it's about anger and it's about power and it's about wanting to be right. I mean, I think about things that if I was resentful for a long time of like how much I would want to be right, now imagine being resentful for thousands and thousands of years. Again, you want to talk about generational trauma. And so it's like you have generations and generations and generations of both Israelis and Palestinians that have been taught to hate each other. And then you have corrupt governments. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm just like, I think to say that there's one, and again, I don't know all of the details and whatever. It's like, I think to say that there's one that's good and one that's bad is probably inaccurate.
Correct. Which is why you're just going to have to, if you affiliate with either side, you just have to accept the fact. Listen, the people who live there, not only have they grown up in this their whole life, their parents and their grandparents have grown up in a world where their neighbor is their sworn enemy and they wish death upon them at all costs. I mean, what do you do with that? There's no resolve. I don't know what the resolve is. I mean, you can't. I'll put it this way. If Israel wanted to, they have the military strength to actually commit a genocide and kill all the Palestinians. They're not going to do that because they're not as morally evil as many people would like them to believe, but they're also not without flaws. The problem is,
yeah, but also it's like then comparing like the Israeli government to Jewish people also doesn't feel fair. Like that doesn't feel fair.
But the reason it gets murky to a lot of outsiders is because they see how much love and appreciation and I don't want to say allegiance, but like alignment Jews worldwide have with the state of Israel, so they kind of group them as one and the same. But the reason is because there was no other. Jews make up less than 1% of the world's population. I know it seems bizarre because we have such prominence in like American media and things like that, but globally, we are a very, very, very small percentage of the earth. So it's the only country, it was specifically created to have one place on earth where Jews theoretically are supposed to feel safe. And it came on the heels of like hundreds of years of just getting slaughtered all through Europe nonstop. I mean, during the bubonic plague, that was like a huge uptick because they thought that was a big narrative that the Jews caused it because the Jews kind of lived in their own communities and they were sort of autonomous. So they didn't get hit with it the same way. So then the obvious narrative was like, well, the Jews must have done it because they're not dying from the plague. And that's just been happening over and over and over again. So, I mean, it's not surprising that this group of people is like, man, we really need to find a place. Why don't we start going back to this origin, this homeland we used to live in that we were expelled from?
But Palestinians don't believe it was your home.
Correct. And they've never accepted it. And that is why since the UN, but see, they never.
And what is the difference between their different ethnic groups or they're different? I know that Jewish is not an ethnicity. I understand that.
Yeah.
But and I know that Arab is. So what is the difference? I'm unfortunately don't even have the.
Well, no, Palestinians are Muslim, Arabs.
So it's Muslims versus Jews.
Correct. There's probably
that was an hour, and I just was able to figure that out.
There's probably some. I would assume there's some Palestinian Christians, maybe. There must be because.
I mean, sure, but on the whole.
Yeah.
So it's
they're
also
Muslim.
okay.
It's Muslims versus Jews.
Okay.
And that is why all of the neighboring the thing is, the neighboring countries like Jordan, Syria, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, all of them, they don't want Israel there because it's a huge piece. It's like a huge middle finger that represents Western American presence. And listen, I understand. Like,
just slow down. I know you're really like, but just.
I know.
Yeah.
We spent the whole episode on this.
Yeah. Well, that's why I knew if we started, that's where we would be.
Shoot, yeah. Well,
I mean, don't be upset with me. I just started.
We didn't have any. We had a couple people pop in live and immediately check out. So
yeah, I understand. It was hard for me to stay present. This is heavy.
Well, the thing that's upsetting that I see coming, and you know, listen, people can laugh and say I'm being paranoid, but you know, you can shove it up your ass if that's how you feel. Is that what's coming next? What?
Don't say things like that. Then you're instigating.
Well, what I'm saying is what's coming next is going to be a call on, like, it's already happening, but even bigger push on like American Jews to start like denouncing the state of Israel and aligning themselves again, you know, with the.
Yeah, I hear that.
I've already seen it.
I know, but I'm just saying also something else in the world is going to happen and everyone is going to stop talking about it.
Sure, but.
Because also, and like, I don't say that to be flippant or cold, but it's like, that's the truth. And I think that's actually the part about where I get the most frustrated, where it's like, oh, the internet's going after influencers for not having an opinion about something that white people decided, primarily white people that are in positions of financial privilege as well, that have decided like, we've got to carry the torch and let everybody know that we're really invested in, you know, in other people's situations where it's like, you know, so I think that's the other folks that are either like, you know, have real, that are, practicing Jews or culturally Jewish or, you know, have a very strong tie to Israel, being very affected by this, Palestinians being very affected by this, you know, and I do think it's something that we should be talking about for sure. It's not like, oh, well, we live in America, so like, that's not here, so who cares? That's not what I'm saying. But I think to have this like just vomit that's happening on social media, all to know that as soon as something else happens, no one's going to give a shit about it again. That's where I actually get angry. I'm like, don't start going after each other and wanting and asking Jewish Americans to either even have an opinion. Like the fact that anybody who identifies as any group that's up for discussion, that it's like, what's your opinion? It's like, we don't do that to everybody. Everybody's just trying to survive right now. Okay. Yeah. Not everybody has to have a number one opinion. Not everybody has to have an opinion that they agree with you. And everybody, like, it's this thing now that we all feel like we are privy to or deserve to know what every single person thinks about every single fucking thing that happens. Like, back off. That's not solving problems either.
I agree, but people love to try and push people into their, you know, way of thinking.
Well, that was like, did I tell you that I saw that tweet the other day? I did, because I couldn't stop laughing at it at the dog park yesterday, where it was like, this, like, you know, the CDC says like now no masks. So it's like, how will we know? Is like, is this the new honor system about people taking off their masks? And then someone else tweeted, have you met us?
Right. It's funny.
And I was like, that's the most real and hilarious. Like, I think if anything, because I've really been trying to think about what have I genuinely learned through the past year and almost year and a half. And I think the number one thing I'm coming to the other side and learning, which is like, I think which maybe people who listen to me talk all the time would totally disagree, but I think I'm like way less fucking judgmental.
It depends on the context, but I would let me pause for a second. I would generally agree with that.
And what I mean is, like, that's not to say that I don't still have opinions or things that fire me up, but I think as a whole, I'm coming to a place now where it's like, if somebody is in opposition of me, I'm not seeing them for their opposition. I'm seeing them as like, oh, I wonder how you got to that place.
Yeah,
Like, I wonder how you got to that place.
totally.
That, it's like
How do you think Trump got to his place?
neglect.
I will say one comment before I'm going to disagree with you on. I think you said something to the effect of like, at least like from Trump to Biden, it's like less scary now or something in that. Do you remember?
No, it's not. It's more boring.
See, I disagree with you. I think it's way more intense now in terms of what's actually happening to like our economy and authoritative control. We just don't have a buffoon at the microphone.
Yeah, I just mean I don't have to like I feel like if there was a soundtrack that went along with 2020, it would be this.
Or the Benny Hill music. Yeah.
No, or the circus music.
Oh, that's circus, right?
It's like now I feel like it's the Benny Hill music, and like one person's coming out a door with no mask, and then somebody with a mask is chasing them out the other door, and then they come back in, and then it's like somebody with a pitchfork, and then they go back in, and then somebody else is like,
I didn't mean for this to be a bummer of an episode.
I mean, it was a bummer. It was a bummer.
I mean,
it's not a bummer.
Look, I don't get emotionally affected by a lot of things, I don't think, but
you get more emotionally affected than you think.
Well,
but I know this was a big one for you.
It's like I said, it's just because it's a very simplistic way we look at the world now where, like I said before, the powerful nation is evil, the less powerful nation is good. And a lot of people who I'm friends with who were comedians have been like reposting and even things saying like something you saw where you're like, wait, so I guess Israel isn't a real country? And there's people who are just blasting out all these infographics and things. And it's not even worth me trying to engage with them digitally because it's not going to go anywhere. And it always, this is the thing I've struggled to try and figure out. It always turns into like this. There's really this narrative that like, well, you Jews already have everything. Do you really have to oppress all these Palestinian people? And there's no room for conversation of like what actually is happening, and it's easy.
But I also encourage you to know that a lot of those folks that are posting those things, I just as this is just an offering, not even as your wife, but just like as from a place of being your friend, which is like everybody's just doing in response to what they think is the right thing.
I'm aware of this,
and that it's not.
But I still have to look those people in the eye and pretend it didn't affect me personally.
I know. And I know that, I'm
not going to say anything.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if you can create space between you and them, that it's not an attack of them. I feel like sometimes you take them as personal like attacks, or that someone is saying that you are bad or you are wrong. And I'm just let me finish. You don't even have to fucking believe me or listen to me, but just let me finish, which is like, if you can just create that space, because again, it's that thing of like, well, why are people saying the things that they're saying? Why are people getting so like, I would understand some of our friends that are Palestinian, that have, I could see how that would be a very difficult, relationship to engage with right now. But for our white comedian friends that are just like seeing stuff and they're like, oh, I'll repost that. Like, I wouldn't really give it more weight than it deserves, because that infographic that they're reposting will literally change based on the climate.
Would you say that same thing if somebody was upset about something that could be called a microaggression towards them? Or like, would that same logic apply? Let's say any other group, right? Where, because like I'm a white man, so my life is easy and all that stuff. If I was like a black woman and I saw infographics that were shared that made me feel less than, would you say that same answer being like, it's...
I'm not saying that you're not allowed to feel less than. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to protect yourself and your own energy, just see how much space you can create between them and...
I'm smart enough to not take things personally, and I'm not going to, again, I don't go and like rant and rave and debate these things with people, because I can, unless they like really want to get into it, I'm happy to. But I know most people, like you said, just want to, they think they're doing a good thing.
Most people are literally scrolling and going, oh, I guess this is the thing that everybody's talking about, I should repost. They maybe read the whole thing once They're certainly not going to research what is on that infographic, and they're going to share it and they're going to move on with their day.
I know, but I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to express that it hurts on a small level that I have to walk around. And again, I'm sure people will be like, "Oh, get over yourself, you privileged white man." But I'm just saying it still emotionally makes me feel sad on a level that I now will always kind of have it in my mind that like I have to always keep a little bit of emotional distance from this person because something very sacred to me, I know, even though I think they're misguided and misinformed, they view as evil, at least in this moment.
Sure.
And sure, I mean, listen, this whole episode was kind of a waste, but we did it. We talked about...
Okay, no. First of all, you don't get to commandeer and make this whole episode about something that you would like to talk about, and then at the end of it, be like, I mean, this was terrible. Like, come on. That's not fair. Don't do that.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know.
I didn't mean to make you feel defeated, Alex. Okay. That wasn't what I was saying. I was simply just wanting to offer of like, before you write off all these people that because they posted an infographic.
I didn't write them off.
I know. But I'm just saying, like, but do you hear what I'm saying though?
I hear exactly what you're saying. What I'm saying is I don't think you would apply that logic if it was any other kind of scenario where it's not worth getting in the weeds of it, but it's just the same thing that it's just very interesting that
I mean, I've had to engage with all sorts of people that have said really shitty things about being a woman. I mean, if you want to talk about things that have that a world that I've had to exist in, I mean, talk about being a comic and hearing the things that men say about women on stage or to me, or sketches that I've had to be in that men have written and they think is hilarious, or like having to be in a pitch room and then the class is led by a man. So I'm sitting there feeling like, how is nobody realizing that like this isn't okay? And then I still have to engage with those people. So yes, I do very much know what it's like to have to engage with people whose opinion is hurtful or feels like a direct response to me, or things that men feel like they've said to me because they feel like they're allowed to say that, or, they say something inappropriate and then make a joke after it because then that makes it okay. They're just joking. So, I know what that feels like. I didn't mean to say your feelings are not valid. I was just simply offering that as like a way to move through the next few weeks a little bit easier. Is just, anytime you kind of start to feel it come too close to your chest, can you just like breathe and like allow that space? That's all. Didn't say it would work for you. I just said it was a suggestion.
Right. But would you say that same thing to a person who felt like they were misgendered, or they were, if somebody said...
not in a public forum, because I'm not an idiot. But yeah, if I felt close enough with them, because it's just simply of like, don't allow all of it to drown you, because it's stressful and it's painful and it's difficult, and it hits at the identity of who you are. And when people are telling you on a grand scale who you are, but are not looking these people in the eye, yeah, it's fucking painful and unfair and unjust and all of those things. So that's why I said it's simply an offering of when you start to get too close to it, how can you just like breathe and just find that space? Otherwise, it's gonna swallow you. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got it.
Well, guys, thank you for coming to the last episode ever of Common Ground. What's wrong? How can I fix it?
Nothing. This was, like I said, no one's going to want to listen to this. This was a terrible episode.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
It wasn't funny.
Why would you talk about... It certainly was not funny. I had a couple of singers, but it certainly was not funny. But I also think, don't say that. To share something that you were very knowledgeable about, and sharing...
I just feel very alone right now, being someone who cares so deeply about this place that is sacred to so many people I at least culturally connect with. I feel very alone that so much of the world and so much of the narrative is aggressively like, you are a monster. And I refuse, I will never, ever back down from the belief that like Israel was created as a place to be a safe haven for Jews. I understand that Jewish people have a pretty good run right now in the United States, for the most part, but there's been a big uptick of anti-Semitism in parts of New York and other places where a lot of the Orthodox live. And so it just feels very alone on an island that I can't really, I have this podcast here, but like, I'm not posting anything about this online because I don't have the energy to go back and forth with people.
I think that's smart.
And I also know that because of you just see the bullet point stuff, a lot of people will just see like an infographic that I support the state of Israel, and then they will lump me into this narrative they've created, and it just is sad. It just makes me feel, it just makes me feel sad and alone.
I'm sorry.
And, whatever. Like I said, this is not what this podcast normally is. I apologize if you came here for something else.
Well, what else was happening in the news this week?
I don't know. I think we should wrap it here.
I was going to give him a part 2.
All right, if you want.
You don't want to?
Let's just wrap this portion right now.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it. I feel like we did it. Hey, let me say though, for real, I really am sorry that you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm going to say that in genuine,
I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that it's like there isn't anything that I can.
No, there's nothing to say. Again, this is what I said before, and I don't think you really. I think it's hard for you to understand where my mindset is, but it's this stuff kind of is a reminder to me that I think. And I'm not religious, I don't go to shul. I don't feel like this religious connection in Judaism, but it certainly is a huge part of my cultural identity, and I feel like, I connect with it in that sense, and it just feels like a reminder of like we're always kind of going to be seen as the other, and like best case it's like they're fine, and like worst case it's like these guys are a problem, which is what we're seeing an uptick of now.
Sure. I can't deny that's not been my life experience, so I don't know. But I also know that you're very affected by blanket statements that affect your identifiers. I know that that's really hard for you.
Sure. I think it'd be weird if that didn't affect me.
No, I know, but I'm saying in comparison to like a lot of other men that I know, that narratives even around like straight white males affect you significantly more than, I guess I also know you much more intimately than like most other dudes, so that's maybe not fair.
Yeah, but I don't like post and rant about it because I don't think we got a fair shake. I just get upset because this is only creating more divisiveness.
Yeah.
And it's like, where do you want me to go with this?
I think it's smart to not post about it. I don't think. That's the other thing that I've kind of come around to right now, and I think again in the whole. I'll say this as wrapping for common ground, which is interesting. Like yesterday when I was going off about why does anybody think that that the government cares about them, and I was like ranting, and you go, wow, I really have rubbed off on you.
Yeah.
But
it made me proud.
I'm not signing up for Antifa anytime soon. Don't freak out, listeners. But I just what was I going to say? That in sharing information back and forth, I feel like you have really opened my eyes to the true reality of virtue signaling, of this kind of like righteousness that we've created, and really how most things genuinely fall right in the middle. And so I think with that is just to say, like, I think it's smart not to post anything. Yeah. Not even about if people are attacking you, but just for like your own sense of self and whatever. Like, that's the other thing where it's like when people attack people for not, sharing, where it's like, well, this is about your people. You don't have a million like opinions about it. And it's like, like I know it's a big narrative among Black women, which is like, I'm choosing Black joy. I'm choosing to enjoy my life. Like, stop coming to me being like, well, what's your opinion? It's like, no, I'm going to like live my life and be with my kids and like, leave me alone.
Amen.
And so I think I'm saying that like, and was going to say I hesitate to say this, but I don't. I think it's like we could all afford to be a little bit more quiet.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
Like,
yeah, I totally agree.
you know, it's like life is really still hard right now. Life is always hard. And especially right now, life is hard. So it's like we just shh, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need it.
Amen.
But I think we did it. How long was this episode?
An hour and 15 minutes.
Wow. That's a lot. I feel like if you're still listening right now, you know, if you can say, I'm really curious how many people will make it all the way through this episode. Probably more than you think.
My dad might listen to the whole thing.
Oh, for sure. For sure, Bobby Gettlin. I would be sad if he didn't.
There you go.
All right. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, whether you agree, you disagree, you learned something new, you know, don't at me. I don't need your opinion. You know what I mean? But I think it's great. We encourage you to go out into the world to have vulnerable conversations with people you feel safe with. Ask questions about things that you don't know. You know, sure, repost the infographic. Also take some time and like really, you know, research through that, or call somebody that you know that is affiliated with a conflict. Ask them their point of view. Then call somebody else you know. If you're choosing to want to educate yourself, please do that. Educate yourself. Choosing to see one thing and regurgitating it and being like, I know everything, is righteousness. That's not education. They're two very, very different things. And I think the number one thing that we need to do right now is to remember that, you know, we are all beacons of resources, of life resources, of experiences. And that if there's something that we don't understand, there's probably somebody we know who has experienced it. It's also not their job to teach us, but knowing that we have the ability to truly be educated, and just reposting things or regurgitating things or yelling at people in the comment section is not how we're going to get to the other side of this. So I hope, if nothing else, if you listen to this today, it was an opportunity to maybe learn something new or hear a different side of this that maybe you didn't know before. So was this the funniest thing you've ever heard? Probably not. But guys, the show's not called Funny Business. It's called Common Ground, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.